Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another podcast from Brian's Business World. And today we are going to talk about the lessons learned from becoming an entrepreneur. Some folks, well, actually, quite a few folks, become entrepreneurs late in life or later in life. And it is quite the change from what they may have had previously. Maybe they had a career in government, maybe they had a career in academia or the corporate world, that type of thing. And it is quite a different environment. So, our guest today, once again, he joined us for the special SB Innovation Research Grants.
SBI.
SBIRs. Thank you, Jimmy. Yeah. So anyway, our guest today is Dr. James McCullagh, has PhD in electrical engineering from University of Michigan, among other variety of other degrees that I will let him speak to. And someone who had not what would I say the cookie cutter journey to becoming an entrepreneur. And I think there's a lot of life lessons and business lessons to be learned from this. So without further ado, Jimmy, I'm glad to have you on board. And in full disclosure, Jimmy's a college friend of mine, so we'll just get that out there. And I'm not going to call you Dr. McCullagh for the
No,
purposes
please
of
don't.
this. For my dead body on that one, no. But so with that, Jimmy, if you could give you just a little bit, or maybe not a little bit, but some background, your education, kind of your
Sure,
professional path, and kind of how you ended up, at least to becoming an entrepreneur.
sure. I grew up in Iowa and went to Northfield, Minnesota. Started my educational career at the University of Northern Iowa in Cedar Falls, Iowa, where I live right now. But then I went to Carleton College with, same graduated the same year as Brian, 1998. I'm a class of 1998.
We're getting up there. We're
We're
getting
getting
into
up
something. Yeah,
there. I
yeah,
know.
yeah.
I was a
Yes.
physics major at Carleton College. After that, I went to Purdue University to get a master's in in computer engineering, a couple internships during my master's degree. And then I took a job in 2001 with IBM for 6 months until they sold me to another company called JDS Uniphase. We were in kind of datacom. I was kind of doing testing for datacom, really.
And when you said they sold, you mean they sold off the
They
business
sold
unit or
off the
the
business
subset,
unit.
the
Yeah.
subgroup you had? Okay,
Sold about a group of 120 people,
got it.
to JDS Uniphase. And I was laid off from JDS Uniphase. They actually closed the entire site in Rochester, Minnesota, where I was working. Within a month, it worked out though. Within a month of being laid off around 2003, I got a job at Hitachi Global Storage Technologies, doing analog design integrated for integrated circuits and hard drives. And I worked for Hitachi for about 5 years until, I was let go. Most of my department was let go. It was the Great Recession. So this was 2008. Um, at that point, I decided I wanted to go back to graduate school. Applied to a bunch of places, got into a couple of them, went to the University of Michigan.
And what was the program that you did there?
So I was in electrical engineering. I studied, you take classes for about a year and a half, and then you do research. And my research focused on circuits for vibration energy harvesting.
Mhm.
So, and
Did you complete the PhD
I did
program?
complete the PhD program, graduated 2014. It's tough, but it's a good experience. I was glad I was there. Ann Arbor, Michigan, back in the day, it was kind of cool, and then I did a postdoc for a few years.
And for the benefit, just to some
What is a
folks,
postdoc?
yeah, for the benefit, yeah, what's kind of like a
A
postdoc?
postdoc is you want to do perhaps you want to go into academia, or you just want some more experience. You want to do research. So I found another professor at the University of Michigan where I continue to do research in vibration energy harvesting. And you're paid more. You're paid as a PhD student, but not much. It's a stipend. You're paid more as a postdoc. And so I did that for a few years. Thought I wanted to be a professor. Changed my mind and thought, because there are a lot of, being a professor is not what it used to be, and there's a lot of issues with being a professor. And I just was more interested in starting my own business. So I started a business 2018, and Started applying to SBIR grants, and they're
Well, let me, and
yeah,
so you started the business, sorry, you started the
it,
business 2000, roughly 2018.
right.
And are you still working on it through present day today?
I am still.
Okay, so you're still a entrepreneur
I am
today.
still an entrepreneur. Have the same business today.
Okay, all right, still working on it today. And do you have, and just so to get your current statement, do you have any intention of ending that business or not continuing with it, at least as we're talking here today?
In the short, medium term, I'm going full throttle with my business.
Interesting.
There's always a dream of an entrepreneur to sell a business, and I think that's sometimes there's a time and place for that. Sometimes there's not. But certainly I'm full.
But so it seems like after career in
Mhm.
I'll call a career 5, 10 years
Yeah,
in private industry, a significant amount of time in academia,
sure,
and even quite a bit of employment in academia,
sure. Yeah.
that you now have been among, or you now are among the converted with entrepreneurship. Is that
Yeah,
fair?
I'm an entrepreneur and I'm really enjoying it. There are a lot of advantages to it. A lot of lessons learned, a lot of challenges, but yeah, I'm happy with it.
What? Okay, so I think this is really given kind of your journey here. And one thing I constantly say, or people listen to me or do this, is that it's open to anyone at any time to
Mhm.
become an entrepreneur. There's not a sort of a statute of limitations on it.
Sure, yeah,
And you've gone through some major other significant fears and now significant stages of your life and career.
right,
And now you're kind of bitten by the bug and doing it
sure,
and continue fully plan on doing it.
yes.
So just what kind of thinking led you to, and let me, I guess I should lay the foundation here a little bit. Being an entrepreneur is really hard.
It is.
So you could have picked something easier to become. Maybe you could have become a surf instructor or something. I don't know. So I mean, like this thing I could think of a lot of especially a technology, and we'll get into your company specifics of your
Yeah,
company a little
sure.
bit later. But I mean, you're launching, or working on, I should say, launching, working on a significant technology venture.
Mhm.
So that's really tough. At least I think it's tough. So what kind of led you to this, to make the decision that you wanted to go down this road?
A number of things. I mean, several things. First is it would have allowed me to work on the research that I did in graduate school for my PhD that I was excited about. And I think that could, it's vibration energy harvesting. You can, limit the use of coin cell batteries, for example. I think there's a lot of good that could be done with my technology.
Mhm.
And I think there's a lot of money to be made eventually from this technology. So I thought it was worth pursuing. So that's a big part of it. I believed in what I did.
Did you feel you're not going to get to pursue that as much in the academic corridors?
I that's true. Academia has challenges. You are trained, first of all, it's highly competitive to get a tenure track position. I mean, let's not kid ourselves with that. To get a really good research-based tenure track position. Number one. Number two, even if you get a tenure track position, often you're trained to do research and then you get a tenure track position and you're teaching. Not that teaching is bad, but you're teaching and then you're writing grants for students so they can do their research. And so you're trained to do something, you get a tenure track position, then you're not really doing what you're trained to do, and you're not really maybe pursuing the research you'd like to do, and you're limited in commercializing your research. And it was deeply important to me to try to actually commercialize the research, bring it to society. That was important to me.
Interesting. So you felt it sounds like in academia you felt, at least I'm hearing that maybe you couldn't have actively worked on or made as much
That's
progress
what I thought.
on
Yeah,
your technology, your
that's
business
that's
then.
true. That's what I thought, and
Okay.
that's what I still think.
Okay. And that's why you're still doing it
That's
to
why,
today and
yeah.
still continue
But
doing
that's
it.
one of the reasons. There,
What
there,
are some of the other reasons then?
um, you have a lot more freedom and flexibility in your life. Now we're both entrepreneurs. it can be really darn hard, and you can be working
Absolutely.
100-hour weeks. You can be making sacrifices. You can be sometimes it affects your health because you're working so hard. I mean, that's the reality.
Absolutely.
Sometimes you fail, and you learn from your failures, and it's not a regular paycheck. There's a lot of
The,
challenges.
the, the failures can sting and hurt badly.
They can, absolutely.
So yeah, everyone's like, well, don't mind failure. And that's
Well,
a good attitude, but also that doesn't mean that, they don't leave a mark on you
yeah,
sometimes.
they
So
do. However, there's a great deal of flexibility. For one, I just on a personal level, I hope that's okay to talk.
absolutely.
My father passed recently, a couple years ago, and he needed someone to be there to help him, and he lived in Iowa, and I was in Iowa a lot of the time since 2020, just being there for him as he dealt with a number of health problems. If I worked for a major corporation, if I worked for academia, I couldn't, be there working from home on my business, and
Right.
helping him. And that was profoundly important to me. So you have that flexibility, number one.
Mhm.
Number two, this old story I had from industry, on a yearly basis when I worked one of my companies, there's, I won't say which one, but I got a one-on-one that you do yearly with your manager's manager. They call it second line manager. And one of his comments to me was, "You don't socialize outside of work enough with, your fellow coworkers."
Was this like in the context of like a performance review
It
and
was in the context of almost a performance review. Yes.
interesting. Okay. All right.
So I
Yeah.
mean, actually criticized me for what I did outside of on what was supposed to be my own time, in the corporate world.
Uh-huh.
And, so,
Was
well,
it that you weren't being a team player or that kind of
but no,
standardized trait?
it's more they're not supposed to, but they looked at what they wanted to know, they wanted a lot of control of you, really, like inside of the workplace and outside of the workplace, and they thought socializing with other employees would help you be a better team player, perhaps, but, you know,
Do you recall how you responded to that, or did you respond to it, or were you
deer in
so
the
shocked?
headlights, I was so shocked. I didn't know.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, you're like, what do you do? You're not doing enough outside the work with your coworkers. Yeah, you probably just were so shocked at that
Yeah,
that there was
but
no response. Yeah,
this is not uncommon.
it is
In
not uncommon.
they're not supposed to judge you on what you're doing outside the work, but in reality, corporations, can will do that. And you so you can, as a small business owner, you can travel when you want. You can get involved in organizations in your community that you want to. God forbid you want to run for political office. A lot of entrepreneurs are run for local political offices. I did that, last year. It was a blast. But if I had worked for a corporation, would never been able to do that, And so you're able to have the freedom to do things in whatever community you chose. And I chose to go and live in Iowa, where I grew up,
Uh-huh.
and take my business to Iowa, where I grew up. And I love it there. And so you have all this flexibility of what you do outside of work, how helping your family members, where you live. You have an enormous amount of flexibility. So that's another thing. You can pursue your technology and you have an enormous amount of flexibility. So these are some of the huge positives. Does that
Okay.
make sense?
Yeah, oh, it totally makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, and that's also very I think a lot of entrepreneurs may underappreciate the freedom they have
Yeah.
because it is a lot of work, as you said.
Mm.
It's not all roses.
No.
And there's an old saying, as an entrepreneur, you choose when you want to work, the first 12 or the second 12 hours of the day. Um,
Yeah, sometimes.
Sometimes, yeah, I would say that that's not always true because it does ebb and flow, and
It
I think a
does.
lot of people don't understand that maybe employees or haven't been entrepreneurs that there is no what I call demonstrative work. There is no face time. You work with 100% efficiency, and if you don't need to do something, you don't do it. So if you have 4 hours a week, work one week, that's all you do. If you have 80 one week, that's
That's
what
all
you
you do.
do.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
that's what you
that
do. Yeah, and so I think a lot of people don't understand that there is a ebb and flow of flexibility to it. There are some long hours.
absolutely.
That's absolutely true. And you will likely overall work harder, at least more, well, I should say maybe not harder, more productively than the corporate world. Because a lot of the corporate world, I call it being rewarded for fake work or showing up
You're
or
being rewarded for being there,
being in the chair.
being in the chair. And sometimes, honestly, when I work in corporations, I would just sit in the chair and stare at the computer. And
Yes, and a
yeah,
lot that I
you
don't think
know,
you're unusual at all in that
you know,
regard.
it's the old what is the office or office space or whatever, the old, comedy. And he's like, I get to work and I sit and just stare at the computer for an hour. That's not far off.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think that's
You
very
know.
common. I mean, ESPN created the boss button that looks like a spreadsheet, so people
Oh,
could look at it from work. And
yeah.
then if the boss peeked in, they could hit the boss button, and it looks like an Excel spreadsheet.
Yeah, I know.
Right? Built that feature right into their website. So yeah, no, I think it's very, very common. Interesting. So, I think that's just par for
So,
the course. But
yeah, I
yeah,
mean,
yeah,
there are times in my startup, you're working 100-hour weeks and you're not getting your sleep. So there,
yeah.
and then there are other times where you have time to have this conversation. So it, you know, that's true. There's a flexibility to it.
Great.
So yeah, those are some of the reasons I did it, and I don't regret it. And I think there is, um, short term, there is a salary cut. I could make more money in corporate world
Mhm.
easily. You know, I've there's a podcast we did about SBIRs, and realistically, at least at first, you're going to be making a lot. You're going to be making noticeably less money doing an SBIR at first than going into corporate world.
Well, so let me tell a little bit about. All right, so you've got
Hmm.
quite a block, a chunk of time with
Hmm.
larger corporations and private
Hmm.
industry. You had quite a chunk of time
Yeah.
in academia, and then you land in
Sure.
Entrepreneurville. Okay, what were some of the initial things that you noticed? I don't even call them lessons, maybe even just like shocks that you got out of the first year or two of doing this type of thing.
Sure. Yeah.
We'll cover lessons here in a little bit, but I almost want kind of like you kind of like land on the beachhead of entrepreneurship and
Yeah.
stuff's and as you know, probably better than a lot of people, stuff starts happening really
It
fast.
does.
And
It
so what were
does.
some of the shocks that you had out of the gate?
One of the big shocks I had was how shakedowns and
Okay, and what do you mean by a shakedown?
shakedowns. You sometimes you have family, sometimes you have, you know, friends, and sometimes you have people you're working with, or people you're working around, or people part of your grant who are working on your grants that want a significant amount of equity from your company, really without doing a lot of work,
Hmm.
you know? And that was probably the most shocking thing. He, you know, someone that's been working with you for a month now wants equity, you know, or someone that you're trying to partner with your company wants significant equity, and when you try to pin them down as to what exactly they're going to do for it, they get mad. Sometimes it's family who, there's nothing wrong with seeking money from family.
Hmm.
But you got to make sure. I would recommend that it's either a parent or a husband or wife that you really trust and that you trust. That is the type of family you want to go to. If it's, more distantly related, who don't really understand what it's like to be an entrepreneur, that can
So, and I want to clarify here on this
Mhm.
this shakedown thing.
Uh-huh.
So it sounds like a shakedown is like where someone just asks for a piece of your company without either A, paying for it, or
Yeah,
B, doing anything. Is that correct?
exactly. That's exactly right.
Okay, and so you had a bunch, several, sounds like
Yeah,
through
several.
these shakedowns.
Yeah, and they're common. Like, for example, coming out of academia, a lot of students will start their startup, and their graduate advisor, whether it's PhD or master's, will want a piece of their company without really doing anything.
Mhm.
And you should say no. And if possible,
Yeah, no, I want to cover that a
a little
little
later.
bit. Yeah, a little bit. Uh, in terms of doing the, so I just want to make sure I'm getting my head around
Yeah.
this. So no one ever offered to give you money for the company.
Um, Family did.
Okay. But you
Family.
still felt that some of that was a shakedown, though.
Some of it was a shakedown. I mean,
Can
my
you
father
expand on
and
that?
I founded the company. My father was very generous to me, and he passed. But yeah, other parts of the family, they're out. You can't want 60% of the company for $60,000. You're not going to do something like that, right?
Okay.
You
So
know,
some of the offers, there was money on some of the shakedown offers, but it was like
yeah,
obnoxious, basically.
yeah, it was obnoxious.
Okay. And
Yeah,
they thought they were like the financial, your greatest financial savior, and they deserved 80 or 100% of the company for
yeah,
a
for
relatively small
a small
investment.
amount. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean
Okay.
that's part of it. Yeah.
And so now let's get away. Like, so this is interesting. People who did basically absolutely nothing
Uh-huh.
and just said, "Here I am.
Yeah.
Give me a piece of the company." Is that what actually went down?
Pretty much. Yeah. Yeah, pretty much.
So what did you do with especially that one? Now I
Uh-huh.
know that at least you can say, okay, there's actually some sort of money proposed. It might be
Yeah.
ridiculous. That at least has some, I'll call it a very tenuous basis in
Mm.
reality. Like there at least is a proposed exchange. We'll
Sure.
go with that. Like, okay,
Yeah.
it might be ridiculous, but at least there's some terms.
Uh-huh.
In my mind, someone just sort of saying, "Wow, I'm awesome," just you know, fork it over, bud.
Work it over
Or yeah,
because
yeah, yeah,
I've
because
somehow
because
contributed.
I'm awesome. Fork it
Yeah.
over because I'm awesome. I actually haven't done anything yet.
Uh,
How did you deal with that? How did you react to it?
Often the way you need to react to it is, the way I reacted to it was just ignoring it, just shrugging and saying, I don't know, man. Didn't we have an agreement that you're going to do X, Y, and Z? Why are we talking about this? Or in other cases, for example, there was a situation where, uh, these people I was trying to partner with early on in my company, they invited me to their kind of business space. And every time they showed me a new piece of, a new part of their lab, they want me to sign a patent disclosure saying we're patenting this, we have this new idea. Every time they showed me something, I'm like, oh, that's cool. And then they want me to sign something. And they show me something again, and then they want me to sign something. So what did I do? First time it happened, I pushed back. I said, look, I stalled basically is what I did. I said, look, I don't know about this. I think this is already patented. Maybe we can, narrow the patent claims on this one little ridiculous item that you're trying to get me to sign. And I spent 20 to 30 minutes negotiating that. Then I got the hell out of there. And then I never went back. You
Hmm.
know, Sometimes you don't want to burn bridges. You don't want to piss people off. You want to be kind. You don't want to have a reputation for telling people off. But in a lot of these situations, stall, drag things out, and get out. That's what I did.
Interesting.
I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I should be blunter. Maybe I should just tell people they're being idiots, but that's not really my style.
Uh-huh.
My style is to try to give people the benefit of the doubt, but then try to extricate yourself from the situation as quickly as,
Sure, sure.
yeah,
Yeah, difficult situation. So was there anyone you were actually paying who did a shakedown to you? You were
yeah,
actually giving them like paying
yeah,
them
yeah,
money.
yeah. That's true.
What
People,
happened without you don't have to get into specific
you know,
what happened with that?
they just stopped because I wasn't going to do any. Or one of the things is, okay, if you want to have a piece of the company, here's what you need to invest.
And I take it they weren't thrilled about
They
that.
weren't right. If you want 10%, that's going to cost you about, tens of thousands of dollars.
And I take it none of these people actually came to you and said, "I'll do A, B, and C." Maybe they didn't put in money, but did anyone actually come to you with what I call a concrete and specific proposal for that
In
equity?
all of these cases, no one did. In one
They never
case,
sent you like a one-page term sheet, like I'll get this for A, B, C, D.
not once. The only,
Wow.
the only, for licensing from the University of Michigan, I licensed my patent. They have they're pretty good about this. It's like for licensing at a certain stage, I think they get 4% or something like that of the company. But that's the only, I mean, but it was reasonable. It was well thought out. It was done by professionals. But in a lot of these cases, in one case, someone I was working in a phase 2 SBIR grant, he wanted a significant portion of my company, and I tried to pin him down on you will do X, Y, and Z to get this, and he wouldn't have it. I
Mm.
just, so it's very, very difficult, and that shocked me. I don't know where this is coming from in society, why people are doing this in society, but yeah, you get shakedowns, people who want part of your company for basically doing nothing.
Yeah, interesting. So that's one of the big things when you landed on
Yeah,
the entrepreneurial
yeah,
beachhead
yeah,
and started taking fire. That's one of the things that you
yeah,
noticed right out. Yeah,
yeah.
was all these people shaking you coming out. And yeah, that is, and I'm a pretty experienced entrepreneur. That did. Um,
We had
at the
talked.
time, you had told me some of that,
Yeah,
although only more recently when
yeah,
we were getting ready to do this podcast, you filled me on some of the more
yeah,
details.
yeah.
How many times
Several
that it
times,
happens,
several
and
times.
also how egregious it was. Like there was nothing offered.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a good lesson for a lot of people.
Is don't
That
give your company away because you think some guy or some individual is going to be motivated to help you.
Yeah, and I think also have what you said earlier, which is have like a stock way or practice of managing this.
Yes.
Like have a stock story or say, let me think on that and just,
Mhm.
that can be very, then they lose that. Or, it could be maybe, sure, everyone is required who owns something to do some sort of monetary investment and some sort of formal proposal to
Yes.
me of what they want to
Please
do.
do.
Could you send that to me? And
Yes.
I'll happily review it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so that's one thing I noticed in my own entrepreneur careers is I made people get me a 1 or 2 page email proposal,
Hmm.
and no one will ever do that. Which is kind of funny. Like
Yeah.
you think that they would, 'cause it's not that hard. It's not a business plan. It's just this,
No.
here's what I'm going to do. Here's what I'm going to get. And that is an odd thing. I mean, I've encountered it, although nowhere near, and I've heard of others encountering it, but nowhere near to the degree that it happened. I think tech also, people in the tech space, especially those businesses, have kind of the right tech company kind of has a lottery ticket effect. You know what I mean? In
It
terms of
does.
generating enormous amounts of
Amounts of,
wealth.
you hear
So
stories of someone who was a Google employee, years ago, and
they had 5 shares.
they had 5 shares. But these Google employees, they're taking a risk to work for this very early stage company. They're probably taking a reduced salary. They're probably being compensated in term, with the stock.
Right,
And I think that could be a motivating thing if a company wants to work with an employee that way. Fine, that's a legitimate way to do it.
right.
But you are actually
You're
working.
working there and taking some of the risk.
You're
Yeah, yeah,
taking the
yeah.
risk, and you to get this,
Yeah.
stock.
And I think a fundamental problem here, and then we'll go
Mm,
into some other
yeah,
shocks that you had.
yeah,
I think a fundamental problem here is that there isn't any burden or risk sharing with these folks. They
that's
they they
true.
they want zero downside and 100% upside, and
Yep.
and that I think is the fundamental problem
Yeah,
with it.
that's
And yeah, we could have another show on what the societal problem is
yeah,
driving that,
yeah,
because it
that's
is an
tough
issue. It is a weird issue
issue.
that
Yeah.
that is so egregious. Like no one would ever imagine buying shares in a publicly traded exchange free. Like no one ever
Yeah.
say, just give it to me.
Just
No
give
one
it.
would ever give you any investment. So it's
Sure.
really weird that people approach early stage businesses in this fashion with such
You
a
know,
entitlement attitude.
maybe they think, that's just a naive guy from Iowa.
I don't know. That's
I don't
very,
know. I mean, maybe they
I,
think,
I would disagree with that
yeah,
assessment, but
probably.
but yeah, but I
I don't.
don't know why that's so prevalent.
It is prevalent, and it's kind of it. I can't explain it.
But
Uh,
do have a story ready, or do have a method as an entrepreneur
Absolutely,
starting out, have that ready,
especially in tech.
especially in tech,
Wh- you know,
especially in tech.
especially in tech. So, yeah, and it's because it will happen.
Yeah, it will happen.
Yeah,
Now, okay, so
that's one.
other that was an immense shock.
Yeah, that's
That's
an
a
immense
significant
shock.
one, especially with like friends and family. Yeah, coming.
Yeah,
So what are some other shocks you noticed? And we'll get into some of the lessons you've got, 'cause you've been
yeah.
doing entrepreneurship for a number of years now. So
Hmm.
we'll talk about that. But what are some of just the initial like sort of shocks you got like early on?
Um, that was the biggest one. Take a break.
Yeah, hang on 1 second.
Can you pause it?
Yeah,
Okay. Are you good?
I'm good.
All right. I'll be